Kwabena was just a boy from Koforidua, a small quiet town in Ghana, but his dreams were anything but small. From the time he could hold a pencil, he was always sketching, on old newspapers, school books, even walls when no one was watching. His drawings felt alive. People in the neighborhood would stop by just to watch him work, amazed at how someone so young could draw emotions, stories, and entire worlds with just a few strokes. He dreamed of more than just local praise. He wanted the world to see his art. He'd stay up late under the dim light of a kerosene lamp, flipping through old magazines and imagining his paintings in galleries across Europe, America, and beyond. He believed that one day people would travel far just to see his work. But life doesn't always follow our plans. His parents didn't have much, and there were always more urgent things than paint or paper, food, school fees, helping out at home. Sometimes he had to trade art time for work time, fixing things around the house or helping his father at the market. Still, he never let the dream die. Kwabena kept drawing, even when there was no canvas. He drew on scraps, on cardboard, even in the dust with sticks. He knew in his heart that he was meant for something bigger, but deep down, he also felt the weight of reality pulling him down, telling him to be practical, to be safe. And yet, he held on, because no matter what the world said, he was the boy from Koforidua who dared to dream. Kwabena met Amma on a hot afternoon in Koforidua. She was standing at a bookshop, flipping through a medical textbook, her eyes full of fire and focus. There was something different about her. She wasn't just studying, she was preparing for war. When he asked her what she wanted to become, she looked up, smiled and said, "Ghana's youngest female doctor." She said it so boldly, like she had already won. He was drawn to her instantly, not just because she was beautiful, but because she had a dream as big as his. They talked for hours that day, about art and medicine, about changing the world, about proving people wrong. She told him how people laughed when she said she wanted to be a doctor. "You, from here?" they would ask. But she didn't let it shake her. Just like him, she was fighting against limits. They started spending more time together. Sometimes she would sit quietly and study while he painted. Other times, they'd walk through the town, talking about their future. They dreamed out loud, him having his art in galleries around the world, her saving lives in hospitals, and making history. It felt like the perfect love. Two people with big dreams, cheering each other on. But dreams can be heavy when you carry them alone, and even heavier when love is involved. Life started throwing its weight around. Money was tight. Amma needed better textbooks, more prep classes. Kwabena wanted to send his art to an exhibition in Accra but couldn't afford the entry fee. There were days when frustration sat between them like a wall, not because they didn't love each other, but because life was forcing them to choose between love and ambition, between dreams and survival. They tried to stay strong. They reminded each other why they started. They shared their fears late at night, whispering promises that they'd make it somehow. But the world outside didn't care about promises. Bills came, family responsibilities grew, time started running faster than their dreams could catch up. And yet, even when things felt like they were falling apart, one thing remained true: they had each other. And sometimes, just having someone believe in you is enough to keep you going, even when the path gets hard, even when you start to wonder if you'll ever get there. Because in the middle of all the struggle, love had quietly taken root. Two dreamers, holding hands, facing a storm. The day Amma got her scholarship letter was unforgettable. She ran to Kwabena's workshop, waving the envelope in the air, tears in her eyes. "I got in," she whispered, breathless. A top medical school in the UK had offered her a full scholarship. Tuition, books, everything. It felt like the universe had finally answered all their prayers. But happiness quickly met reality. The scholarship didn't cover travel, visa, or living costs. The flight alone was more than they could imagine. Her family was proud, but broke. Everyone said, maybe next year, maybe something else will come. Amma tried to smile through it, but Kwabena could see the light slowly fading from her eyes. He couldn't let her dream die. Not after everything. Not after all those late-night talks, all the sacrifice, all the hope. So, without telling her, Kwabena made a decision that would change everything. He went to the small art shop in town where some of his best work was kept. Paintings that held his soul, one of his mother's hands, another of Amma reading under a tree, and a massive one called Freedom, which he had never shown anyone. Those pieces were like pieces of his heart. But he packed them up and travelled to Accra. determined to sell them to a gallery he'd only heard about. The gallery owner saw the work and was stunned. "Why are you selling these?" he asked. Kwabena just smiled. "Because someone else's dream needs to fly before mine can." He got just enough money, enough to pay for her flight, her visa, her first few months abroad. He returned home quietly and handed Amma an envelope. She opened it and stared at the receipts, the ticket, the visa approval, shaking her head in disbelief. "How?" she asked. He simply said, "Dreams are meant to be lived. Go live yours." Amma cried in his arms. She begged him to tell her how he got the money, but he never told her the full truth. He just smiled and said, "You'd do the same for me." But inside, a part of him broke, not from sadness, but from letting go of something he loved deeply. That night, as she packed her bags, Kwabena sat alone with an empty wall where his paintings used to hang. His hands, once full of colours and brushes, were now quiet. He knew his time would come. Maybe not now, maybe not soon, but he believed in her more than he believed in anything else. And so, without anyone knowing, he gave up a piece of his dream so hers could take flight. A silent sacrifice, a loud kind of love. The workshop smelled of oil and metal. Engines coughed, hammers rang, and grease covered everything, including Kwabena's hand. Once, those hands painted skies and dreams. Now, they fixed brakes and engines. From morning till evening, he worked at a small mechanic shop near the edge of town, earning just enough to live. People often asked him, "Weren't you the boy who used to draw?" He'd nod with a soft smile and say, "Life changes." They didn't know the full story. They didn't know how he had traded brushes for bolts, colours for car parts, all so that someone else's future could shine. But Kwabena never complained, not once. Every evening after work he would go home, wash the grease off his fingers, and open his phone. He'd scroll through Amma's messages, photos of her in a white coat, standing in shiny hospitals, her name printed under Dr. Amma Owusu. She always sent voice notes telling him about her day, the patients she helped, the lives she was learning to save. And every time he heard her voice, he felt peace. He missed painting, deeply. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he'd sit outside and draw in the dust with a stick, just to feel it again, just to remind himself that part of him still lived, even if buried under work and time. Amma always told him, "You're the reason I'm here." But she didn't know the full weight of that sentence. She didn't know how he watched her plane take off that day, holding back tears, how he walked home afterward, empty-handed but full of pride. People around him moved on. Some married, some travelled, but Kwabena stayed, quietly working, quietly waiting. He didn't chase galleries anymore. He didn't talk about his art. He just lived. But inside, there was still a spark, a small light that refused to die. A part of him still believed that dreams never truly disappear. They just sleep. And until his own dream woke up again, he was content watching Amma live hers. That was his happiness. That was his reward. Years passed. Seasons changed. Paint faded. But love stayed. Quiet, strong, and unshaken. Kwabena, the boy from Koforidua, once dreamed of the world seeing his art. Now, he fixed cars in a small town, with grease on his fingers and pride in his heart. Because somewhere across the ocean, the girl he loved was saving lives, and she carried his silent sacrifice with every heartbeat. After 5 long years, Amma finally came back home. The airport was crowded, but her eyes searched only for one face. And there he was, Kwabena, standing quietly by the gate, his shirt slightly stained with oil, his hands rough, but his smile still gentle. She ran to him and hugged him tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of home. "I missed you," she whispered, and he just held her, saying, "Welcome back, doctor." Amma had changed. She carried herself with confidence now, with the calm strength of someone who had faced life and won. People called her the pride of Ghana. Her name had appeared in newspapers, her photo in magazines, but none of that mattered more than this moment, coming back to where it all began. Kwabena took her home through the same dusty streets, now filled with new shops and buildings. They laughed, shared stories, and caught up on the years they had lost. But in the middle of all the joy, Amma began to notice something different in him. He smiled, yes. He listened, yes. But something in his eyes had changed. There was a quietness there, a weight he never spoke of. When she asked if he still painted, he looked away and said, "Not really. Work keeps me busy." Later she visited his small room. The walls that were once filled with paintings were bare now. No brushes, no canvases, just a toolbox, some work clothes, and an old wooden table. Her heart sank a little. "Where's your art?" she asked gently. He shrugged. Maybe it's sleeping, or maybe it had its time. Amma didn't know what to say. She sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands, those hands that once created magic, now calloused and stained. He had always been the dreamer, the one who believed in color, beauty, expression. And yet, here he was, living a life so far from the one he deserved. She suddenly felt the sharp sting of guilt. While she was out there becoming someone, had he been quietly fading? Had she let him carry the weight alone? But Kwabena never made her feel bad. He asked about her patience, her stories, her life abroad. He smiled at every achievement like it was his own. And maybe in some way, it was. That night, as Amma lay awake in her old room, she couldn't stop thinking about his eyes. They still held love, but they also held something else. Something like a closed door, behind which a whole world of dreams had been locked away. And in that moment, she knew it was time to find the key. It happened by accident. Amma was helping Kwabena clean out an old wooden box in the corner of his room, one he hadn't touched in years. At first, it just looked like a pile of old papers and notebooks. But when she picked one up and opened it, everything around her stopped. It was a sketchbook. The cover was worn out, edges torn, but the drawings inside, they were breathtaking. Page after page, emotion poured out in pencil and charcoal. She saw portraits of children laughing, mothers carrying water, sunsets over Koforidua, and then she saw herself. Amma sitting under a tree, reading. Amma smiling. Amma looking straight ahead, drawn with such care that her eyes on the page seemed alive. Her hands trembled as she turned each page. This wasn't just art. It was him, his soul, his story, his silence. These weren't doodles or forgotten works. These were the pieces of him he had locked away when life got too hard, when love asked him to wait. And then she found a page with a single sentence written at the bottom. For her to fly, I must stay grounded. Her heart cracked. Tears filled her eyes as she looked around the room again. The bare walls, the missing canvases, the empty space where his dream used to live. All these years, she had been chasing her future, never fully realizing what he had left behind to make it possible. She thought back to the scholarship, the flight, the early days when money had seemed impossible. She never asked too many questions, just believed him when he said it was taken care of. But now she saw it clearly. He had sold his heart to give her wings. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window with the sketchbook in her lap, flipping through each page like it was a lost piece of him. She felt guilt, yes, but also something else, a powerful, aching love. Kwabena didn't just love her with words. He loved her with silence, with sacrifice, with the kind of strength that hides behind gentle smiles. The next morning, she looked at him differently, not just as the man who loved her, but as the artist the world had forgotten. Because he chose her first. She knew she couldn't change the past. But maybe she could help bring back what was lost. Maybe it wasn't too late. Because love like his didn't deserve to fade. It deserved to be seen, to be honored, to be celebrated, just like the man behind the sketches. Amma couldn't stop thinking about those sketchbooks. Each drawing stayed with her, whispering stories of a dream that had waited too long in the shadows. She knew she had to do something, not just to say thank you, but to remind Kwabena of who he truly was. Not just a mechanic, not just her quiet hero, but an artist the world needed to see. She reached out to a gallery in Accra, a well-known place she had once passed by during her university days. She sent them photos of Kwabena's art, scanned carefully from his old sketchbooks and hidden canvases she'd found wrapped in cloth in his storage. The gallery curator responded within hours. "Who is this artist?" he asked, stunned. "These pieces, they're powerful, emotional, real." Amma smiled. "His name is Kwabena. He's never been exhibited before, but he's ready." And just like that, it began. Amma worked in secret. She took a few of the original sketches to be framed. She borrowed money to print large versions of his earlier work, and even had his biggest surviving painting, Freedom, restored by a professional. She named the exhibition The Hands That Waited. She sent out invitations to art critics, bloggers, local media, and a few influential people she'd met during her time abroad. But most importantly, she found his old mentor, an elderly art teacher who once told Kwabena, "You'll move the world with your lines." When the man saw the invite, he wiped his glasses and said, I've waited years for this. Every detail was perfect. Soft lighting, a calm soundtrack playing in the background, and each piece carefully placed in the gallery like it had been waiting its whole life for this night. At the center of it all was a photo of Kwabena, young and smiling, holding a paintbrush. But the one person who didn't know about it was Kwabena. Amma told him there was a small event in Accra and asked him to come with her. He hesitated, said he didn't have the right clothes, but she insisted, "Just trust me." He had no idea what was waiting. As the night approached, Amma felt nervous, not because of the crowd or the critics or the media, but because she knew this was more than an exhibition. It was a moment of return, a moment of healing. She looked at the gallery one last time before the doors opened. Every wall spoke his name. Every brushstroke told a piece of his story. And deep down, she knew this would be the night that changed everything. For Kwabena, for his art, for their love. Kwabena thought he was just going to a small event with Amma. He wore his usual clothes, simple shirt, worn-out shoes, and tried to hide the nervousness he felt. He wasn't used to big gatherings or fancy places, but he trusted Amma. If she said it was important, he would be there. When they arrived at the gallery, Kwabena's eyes went wide. Bright lights lit up the building, and above the entrance, his name glowed in large letters. Kwabena's art exhibition. For a moment, he just stood still, unable to believe what he was seeing. Inside, the room was filled with people, artists, critics, journalists, and old friends. Everyone was quietly moving from one painting to another, studying the lines, the colors, the emotions trapped in each stroke. Kwabena felt like he had stepped into a dream, or maybe a memory of a dream he thought he had lost. He walked slowly through the gallery, his heart pounding. There, on the wall, was freedom. The painting he had never shown anyone outside his small town. The same piece he had sold in secret years ago to help Amma fly. Now, it stood proud, bold, and beautiful. People stopped him to shake his hand, to congratulate him, to ask about the stories behind his work. Some even said his art made them feel something they hadn't felt in a long time. Kwabena listened, amazed, but also shy. This was new. Amma stood quietly by his side, watching him with a smile that held both pride and relief. She saw the tears in his eyes, the tears he tried to hide for so long. The boy who had given up so much was finally being seen. At one point, Kwabena's old mentor came up to him. The man's hands trembled as he touched Kwabena's shoulder. "You were always meant for this," he whispered. "Your art speaks louder than words." Kwabena looked around again. The crowd, the paintings, the lights. His dreams were no longer hidden in dusty sketchbooks or buried under grease-stained hands. They were alive, shining bright for everyone to see. For the first time in years, Kwabena felt free, not just because of the applause or the praise, but because he remembered who he really was. The boy from Koforidua who dared to dream. And tonight, those dreams didn't just live inside him anymore. They lived in every corner of that gallery, touching hearts and inspiring souls. The crowd was silent, speechless, moved by the power of his art and the story behind it. It was a night that changed everything. For Kwabena, for Amma, for the boy who never stopped believing. The room had gone quiet, the kind of silence that hangs heavy with emotion. All eyes were on Kwabena, still standing in disbelief as the crowd admired his work. Then Amma stepped forward. Someone handed her the microphone. She took a deep breath, looked around the gallery, and then at him. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered with tears. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Tonight is not about me. Tonight is about a man whose name you might not know, but whose heart, talent, and sacrifice have shaped everything I am." People leaned in. Cameras turned. Phones were raised. The room listened. "I stand here today as Dr. Amma Owusu," she continued, "a woman who traveled far, studied hard, and achieved her dream of becoming a doctor. But what most people don't know is that I never walked that path alone. I had wings, yes, but someone else gave them to me." She looked at Kwabena, who was now frozen in place, his eyes wide, his heart pounding. "When I got my scholarship, I couldn't afford the plane ticket, the visa, even my first semester. I didn't know what to do. I almost gave up, but Kwabena didn't let me. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask for anything in return. He sold his art, his soul, his dream, to make sure I could chase mine." Gasps filled the room. Some covered their mouths. Others wiped away quiet tears. He never told anyone. He just kept working, as a mechanic. With hands that were meant to paint the sky, he fixed engines instead. And he never once complained. Not once. Amma's voice cracked, but she didn't stop. This exhibition tonight, it's for him. Because it's time the world saw him. The world needs to see the kind of love that doesn't shout, but sacrifices. The kind of dream that sleeps, but never dies. Look around you. These paintings are not just art. They are pieces of his heart, hidden away for years. She paused, looked at the crowd, then back at Kwabena. He is the artist. He is the reason I'm here. And from today, I want Ghana and all of Africa to know his name. The room erupted into applause. Loud, powerful, unending. Reporters rushed to share the moment. Social media lit up with clips of Amma's speech. Within hours, just Kwabena the artist trended across Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. People wanted to know more, wanted to see his work, wanted to honor his story. Kwabena stood still as the noise filled the gallery. But inside, something opened, something healed. For the first time, the world wasn't just clapping for his art, they were clapping for him. After the exhibition, everything changed. Within days, Kwabena's inbox was full. Emails from art galleries in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, even Europe. They wanted to display his work. They wanted to represent him. They wanted to know the story of the man who gave everything, then found his way back to the dream he once buried. Amma watched it all with quiet joy. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because love like his deserved a second chance. And now, finally, the world was listening. Kwabena began to paint again, not in secret, not in silence, but in the open, with pride. His hands, once stained with grease, were now full of color again. He painted faces of strength, moments of joy, stories of struggle and hope. People connected with his work, not just because it was beautiful, but because it was real. Amma and Kwabena started to travel together. She would speak at medical conferences, share health knowledge in villages, save lives. He would sketch the people they met, capture their stories in art, and bring those stories back to galleries and walls across the continent. Their paths were different, but they walked side by side now, her healing bodies, him healing souls. He once gave up his dream so she could fly, but she made sure the world never forgot his wings. Together, they built a new future, two dreams, once separated by sacrifice, now joined by love.